afternoon, everybody. I'm Rafia Ahmed, occupational therapist. Today, I welcome you all to this series of webinar, which is organized by the Occupational Therapy Department at Fernandez CDC. So today, we are having our third and last session in which we are going to talk about to understand the skills required for academic learning and daily living tasks. So this is a pyramid from which we are talking about. I think now you must be familiar with it. So we have already in first session, we talked about the sensory system. Then we talked about the sensory motor development. And today we're going to talk about the perceptual motor development and cognition and intellect. How the sensory system will affect our perception, motor and cognition. So today we're gonna talk about the sensory perceptual motor skills, which are visual perception skills, visual motor integration, which is eye-hand coordination and postural adjustments, ocular motor control, auditory language skills, cognitive skills. And the end product of these sensory processing are the self-regulation, regulation of attention, academic readiness, and activity of daily living. So before starting, I want to touch upon that how the tactile sense affects our everyday skills. So first is aerial skills, in which activities which require body awareness and motor planning, like eating, dressing, grooming, bathing, and toileting. Then tactile, visual perceptual skills, language, academic learning, emotional security, and social skills. How the vestibular sense affect our everyday skills. The first is visual perception skills, aerial skills, which requires movement, balance, and motor planning, that is toileting, auditory language skills, muscle tone, bilateral coordination, and emotional security. Then the proprioceptive sense, how it is affect our everyday skills. First is aerial skills, which requires body awareness, postural stability, in dressing and toileting, motor control, motor planning, and emotional security. So motor control, motor planning, and emotional security we already talked about. Regarding the visual perception skill, aerial skills, we'll talk today. So how the vision sense affect everyday skills are visual perception skills, aerial skills, and oculomotor skills. So I just want you to remember that these points are there. So we will talk about it. We will give you a brief idea what it is and how it is going to affect. Okay. Then the auditory sense, how it affects our everyday skill, the oromotor planning, and auditory language skills. So let's start with the sensory perceptual skills. So these are the four sensory perceptual skills. First is visual perceptual skill, visual motor integration, ocular motor control, auditory language skills, and cognitive skills. So let's first talk about the visual perception. So visual perception is the person's ability to interpret, analyze, and give meaning to what he sees. So basically, whatever we see, if we understand and we try to take that thing and we try to understand what it is, and then only we either we remember it or we just forget it. So it has 7 components. The first is visual attention, then visual discrimination, visual memory, figure ground perception, visual closure, form constancy, and visual spatial relationship. So we'll talk about each component in a brief way. So first, let's talk about the visual attention. So in this, the child pay attention to what he is doing while blocking out extraneous stimuli. So whatever he's looking at, he is attentive towards it. So if a child who is easily distracted or has trouble sustaining visual attention, when you have a difficulty in visual attention, it leads to trouble shifting their visual attention. So sometimes you will see the child is so engrossed or so absorbed in one thing, even if you call, he doesn't shift his attention. And they don't notice what is happening around them. And if a child is visual hyper responsive, then the child may have problem noticing visual stimulus or sustaining visual attention. So they might be having a shifting attention. They get tired very easily. They just keep looking here and there very quickly. Or sometimes they just not at all look at it. they just miss out the visual inputs, and that uh, they misses out on the vital development opportunity as well, because we learn so much with our vision. Then the second is visual discrimination. Then in this, the child identifies distinct feature as objects such as color, shape, size, and orientation, and helps match and categorize object. Like you can see in this picture, there are two ladies, so you can figure it out if they are same or different. So how you know that they are same? Because you can see their color, their size, their shape, and the way they are standing. So by this we know if these are same or different. So this is our visual discrimination. When you have a difficulty in visual discrimination, it leads to trouble recognizing face and difficulty in noticing between B and D and rectangle and square. Then the third is visual memory. In this, the child remember things he has seen, like when you imitate any movement, any gesture, or when you're writing or in spelling tasks. So in spelling and writing, you have to remember what you have seen and then you write. And then recognizing and associating, sorting and retrieving visual details that one has seen previously. So this means whatever you have seen, you have registered it, you have remembered it, and then you have to retrieve it. Like when we like in a road sense, when you know where to go, you remember the path where you are traveling. Then it also impact our sequential memory, like perceiving words and pictures in order and remembering the sequence important in reading and spelling. And it also affect our working memory. Like working memory is our short term memory, and impacts our impacts working memory too, which Ridhima will also talk about in the academic readiness. When you have a difficulty in visual memory, it leads to a child may have excellent memory for life experiences rather than factual information. And they may have difficulty relating new visual information to what he actually knows. Then the fourth is figure ground perception. Uh, so the child differentiate between foreground and background, which is essential for attending to important visual stimuli while ignoring distracting surroundings. Like in this picture, you can see there is one table, and in front of the table, one pattern is there, and child is trying to copy it. So in this, the child is ignoring what the background is, and he's just focusing on the task. It is also like when suppose there is a clutter of toy boxes there, and if you want your child to pick one particular ball or toy, then he should be able to discriminate and ignore the surrounding of the toys, and he should able to pick one that what you asked for. So he should know he should have the figure ground perception to distinguish one word in a page or face in a crowd. So when the child is reading, you can see the page and the letter. They should be able to recognize what letter, what word you have asked her. Where he has to read and what she has to read. When they have a difficulty in figure ground, it leads to they may have trouble finding one toy in a box full of toys. They have trouble reading because he can't select specific word on a page to read, because they get they are not able to discriminate between the background, and they get lost. Then the fifth is visual closure. Child use visual clues to recognize object without seeing the entire image. Like in this image, this is not a full image, but still many of you can figure out what it is. Okay, like it's an aeroplane, but that's not a full image. So we just see the part of the image, and then we just collect the image. Okay, it resembles with the aeroplane. So like when you like suppose there is a milk carton in your fridge, and you open it and you just see a top part of the carton, and oh, this is my milk carton. So it's not like that you have seen the full milk carton in your fridge, but still you figured out that this is my milk carton. So when you have a issue with visual closure, the child usually find it difficult to find objects which are high, partially hidden. So like if they have you have put a lunchbox in their bag, so and there are books are there, so he might, until he sees the full lunchbox, he might not understand that this is my lunchbox. Then the sixth is form constancy. It is the recognition of a form, symbol, or shape, even when its size, position, or texture changes. Uh, it required for matching, separating, or categorizing object, or to know whether a letter is U or N or P or Q. So suppose if I write A, if I write A on the blackboard, if I write A on the notebook, if I write A in a calligraphy form, or if I write A in a different text form, but still you will be able to recognize that it is A. So, but if a child is having difficulty with the form constancy, if you write A on the blackboard, they know it's A, but the same A you write on the notebook, they will not know this is A. So usually they face difficulty in generalizing things. The seventh is visual spatial relationship. That is our directionality and literality. So directionality let him to judge how close objects are to other object and to oneself. So like suppose if you're standing in a queue, you know how much, how another person is, how close that person is standing to you, or how far is the object. Or like if you're playing ball with him, so that he should know that if the ball is coming fast, that how close ball is it, where he needs to grab it, where he needs to release it. And now laterality gives him the awareness of right, left, front, back, up, down. Basically the part of the thing where the thing is up or the thing is down, thing is on its right or left. So both are important for the spatial vision, which tells him how objects are positioned in space. If a child does not have a understanding of how close and how far is the things are on his right or in his left side or up and down, then he will be lost in, and he will bang on things. He will not be able to, like, he will not be able to play properly as well. So suppose if you throw a ball, he will not know where he needs to tilt to the right side to grab a ball, or tilt to the left side to grab a ball, or he needs to lift his hand up to grab a ball, or he needs to bend down. So when you have a difficulty in literality, directionality, or spatial vision, it leads to difficulty in wearing clothes. So child will not know that he needs to put his right hand to the right arm of the jacket, or he needs to pull, take out the take out the t-shirt, and he needs to put his head first. They have difficulty, playing with toys, difficulty to learn to climb stairs and catch a ball, because both requires a depth perception. Depth perception is how, what is, depth is how far is the thing is. They will have persistent letter reversal beyond age 8. They get confused with number and letter sequence, because when you are reading, you're going from left to right, so they get confused. They had trouble understanding directional words such as up, down, in, out, under, and over. So those were the components of the visual perception skills. Now let's talk about visual motor integration. So visual motor integration is when your vision and your movement comes together. So visual information is required to guide the planned and purposeful movement. When synchronized with visual motor skills, a child moves his or her body efficiently, like moving from one place to another, copying simple drawing, or imitating when you're making, suppose playing Legos or making blocks. They can make a block structure, and they see how far they have to reach and grasp. So if I know the ball again, suppose we are playing a ball game with them. So the person, if the child is looking at the ball, he sees the ball is coming to towards the child. So he will have to be alert that how near the ball is, then he has to go and grab it, or either he needs to go to the right side or the left side. Then when the child eye and body must work together to accomplish many development and daily living tasks. So it has three components in it. First is eye-hand coordination. Eye-hand coordination is basically required for your fine motor activities. When you have a poor eye-hand coordination, it may lead to difficulty in manipulating toys, school materials, catching a ball, or using pencil and crayons, and fastening his clothes. Because the child will a child will have to see and do things with the hand. The eye and hand should work together. If the child is having issues with eye foot coordination, then he will have more of an issue with gross motor skills, in which you will have poor with affect smooth walking, running, and in playground. There is a third is eye ear coordination. When you have a poor eye and ear coordination, you will not be able to rate what you hear and what you see. So maybe the child is seeing an apple. When you're saying an apple, he is not able to combine both things together, and this affect his speaking, reading, and writing skills. So there are some visual perception benchmarks which we see, in typically we see by 6 months we see the child start following moving object with eyes in all direction. They looks at objects several feet away, and typically by 6 to 8 months they watches surrounding activities more, follows trajectory of quickly moving object such as a ball. By 15 months he touches picture while looking at them. He visually guide activity using two hands. By 18 months they look at the picture in books, shows understanding of color and size. By 36 months, they stack rings in a correct order, watches and imitate other children. By fourth year, they recognize their own written name, knows left and right, draws and name pictures. So now there are some activities which are which will improve visual perception skills. The first is visual cues. Okay, so you use a colored dot or sticker to show what side of the page to start writing or reading. So suppose when you want your child to start reading, so you put a green dot or green sticker or green put any color. So green means start. So the child will start reading, and where you want your child to stop it, you can put a red mark or red sticker. So he knows now here he needs to stop. You can also make a directional arrows. Like I'll just show you this. Suppose if I write A, so you can make an arrow to show that he needs to draw line downwards like this, and then he needs to draw line downwards like this, and for this he needs to draw here. So by with the help of arrow, he will know where he wants to, he needs to go and write it. Many uses graph paper also to help with word spacing and sizes. You can highlight the lines. Basically where you want to write it, you can boldly mark the lines with with the bright colors, with the red, yellow, green, so the child knows that in between these lines he has to write. Then you can also give paper copies rather than copying from the blackboard. The child will have thing on the paper and he can just copy it from there. Otherwise sometimes child just get lost when he needs to use the head up and down, so they are not able to do. So you can give them the paper copies. You can also put the alphabet strips in front of their study table, and where the child is doing their work, so that they can see there how to write the alphabet, and then they can write. The very important thing is you have to eliminate the clutter. So whatever is not required for that particular activity, it should not be near or on the table for the child. Otherwise, the child will get distracted. So you have to eliminate distraction and position desk away from distraction. So you have to look for some corner in your house which has the minimal direction and child can focus on the activity. Then again, eliminate visual distraction. Nowadays we have a very nice habit like decorating our kids table with very nice fairies or some cars and whatever. We try to make it very attractive for the kids so that kids will show interest, come in. But sometimes it can have a negative effect too, because the child will, when they see so many colors and so many pictures in front of them, they get distracted. So you have to eliminate the visual distraction and keep worksheet clear and simple. Whatever the activity is, try to do it in a very simple way. Don't give too much on one worksheet as well. Make it a very small clear thing. Then again, outline boundaries. You can use a red marker to outline boundaries for color mazes. Suppose if you're asking your child to do the maze games, from one end they have to go to another end. There are many good websites there which has maze games for different age group. Even for toddlers, they have. It's very nice. You can just Google it. If you need any assistance in that, you can ask us too. In which you can take a printout and then you can mark, the boundaries of the mazes, and the child will know that where he needs to go. Because sometimes we see there is too much black line, white paper. This becomes too confusing for child. You can break visual activities into small steps. Suppose you are playing a puzzle with your child, just give one piece at a time so that he will focus, he will not get distracted. You can play hidden picture game in books, magazine, and rooms. Uh, so you can take a very book which has big pictures initially. It also depends on the age of your child, and you can think of one picture, and you can just give clues to the child and they have to find it. And sometimes there are many games are coming on the sheet. Some animal is there and they block it with some flag. Okay, then the child has to find where the animal is. uh, and you can also make this at home. You can cut out the pictures, you can put it on the sheet, paste it on the sheet, and you can make a flap of one white paper, and they have to find it where it is. Then you can play the picture drawing, in which you will just draw the half picture and the child has to complete the another half. Then dot to dot worksheet and puzzles. Uh, then you can also play the construction type activities, in which you will make something and you will encourage child to imitate and replicate what you are creating. So now again you have to see your child level. uh, then again you build, and then the child will and make something constructive, like make a car, make a tower or castle, or make a bridge, so that child will be motivated that yes, we are doing something. Many times what we do, we just randomly play with blocks. So if you do a constructive type, you will make something, the child will be more motivated towards it. There's one more activity with the flashcards. In this, you can also make it, you write the correct form of the letter and write the incorrect form of the letter, and you can ask child what is the incorrect form and correct it. And to make it more fun, you can play this in sand or finger paint, for shaving foam, or you can also, in one plate you can put flour and you can ask the child to make patterns in it. Now there is a word search puzzles that requires you to look for a series of letters. So now again, these are all our activity for the older kids, in which the books are coming on. You have to, or maybe in newspaper you can play. You can just look for some alphabet or letters, and the child has to find it. Where is it? Copy 3D block designs. 3D block designs, identify objects by touch. So you will put, you can have the plastic alphabet in which you can feel the alphabet, and also you can make it at home. You can the sandpaper is easily available in the market. In sandpaper you can cut down the alphabets and you can stick it on the paper, and then you can put it in the bag and the child will see, because the sandpaper texture is little rough, so he can notice what alphabet it is, and they can tell you what it is. And it is a very fun activity too, because sometimes the child just don't like when you give them pencils and alphabet writing and reading work to do. Now let's talk about the ocular motor control. Ocular motor control is when you have eye muscles, basically eye muscle control. So ocular muscle work together to control eye movement and facilitate eye teaming. So basically the ability of your eye to work together in a coordinated fashion. So there are three basic type of eye movement. First is fixation. That means you are looking at something. Right now you are all looking at your screen. This is a fixation type of ocular motor control, that you are just looking at one place. Then second is cascades. It's the ability of our eyes to make accurate jump as we change target, like when we do for the blackboard writing. So there we have to look up at the blackboard, then we have to look at the notebook, and then we have to write. So the target is changing. Then there is a third is pursuits. It is the ability of your eye to follow a moving target. Like in classrooms, many times teacher explains something while when she is walking. So in that way, you have to look at the teacher, and you have to listen also what is happening. So there is a continuous regular eye movement happening. So when there is an impairment in ocular motor control, which is often by the muscle weakness or vestibular processing challenges or injury or dysfunction in our central nervous system, can directly influence a child's ability to accurately perceive and receive visual information. Like you when you don't need to move your head to look around the room. Okay, your head will be still and you can move your eyes left and right. But suppose if you have a poor ocular motor control, then you might use the compensatory movement, like you moving your hand. Suppose I need to look at the right, maybe you're using your full head to look at the right. Okay, by this many times the kid miss out the very useful visual information from the environment. Now there are some strategies to develop ocular motor skills, which is popsicle stick reading. Ridhima, can you please show us what is popsicle reading? So you can see there is a popsicle and where she has written alphabets A, B, C, D. So there way you encourage child to do A. So there he's looking down, A, B, C, D. Okay, so this is popsicle reading. Or if you don't have popsicle at home, you can also make a strip of paper and then you can write it. And write it with colorful pens so that it will attract child. Then the second thing is ball activity with letter on ball. So there are many balls are also coming which has alphabet and numbers written on it. Or you can take a normal basketball or plain plastic ball which is available in the market, and with the marker you can write alphabet or numbers, and then you can roll a ball slowly, and the child, when the ball is rolling, the child has to read what number is coming. So again he is moving his eye from one direction to another. Then you can play scarf toss or catch, in which you will just flip away a small dupatta and scarf, and child has to catch it. So he needs to see where the scarf is and then he tries to catch it. The same way we do it with the bubbles, blowing bubbles, or the balloon, playing with balloon. The balloon, you can just flip the balloon up and the child has to catch it. Then the alphabet and number sequencing activities. Games that encourage fixation, like mazes and dot to dot. Like I told you, there are many mazes, for small age group to older age group. These are available, and it's very good because in mazes you have to see the where the route is from one end to, if you have to go to another end. So you have to have a visual fixation where the things are moving. And dot to dot, many nowadays many nice worksheets, and even at home you can make a picture with the numbers, and you can ask your child to connect the dots. So they have to see, they have to connect 1 to 2, 2 to 3. By this they will know the number sequence, and they will also join the dots, and it will encourage their visual fixation. For these we have to make some accommodations as well, which are very important in this visual perception, oculomotor movements. Basically, accommodation are supports that help your child to complete a task more easily with use of adaptive strategies. Okay, if the child has trouble with copying information from the board, offer copying from the near point instant, using. So it's basically, if a child is having trouble copying from the blackboard, give him paper copies, like we discussed it before. Okay, and make it little easy for your kid to understand, to be part of it. uh, don't feel that no, your child has to do it in certain way. So make little changes for your child to help them to get things. So when they are reading, you can have your child use their finger or index finger to help them keeping in place. So you can ask your child to read like this, or you can also use a pencil, and you can ask them to flip the backside, and you can ask them to place this pencil point on the words while reading. So he will not be lost while he's reading. So now these were the visual perception and visual motor integration skills. Now we'll talk about the auditory language skills. Uh, so first is speech. The speech is the sound that comes from your child mouth as words. Okay. Now speaking is a very complex process in which the first thing is the child must decide to communicate something. Okay, and then figure out what combination of sounds to use. Then after, when he decides and when he knows what sounds to use, then the comes with the motor plan part, where he needs to use his tongue, jaw, to produce a intelligible sound, which is understandable. Okay, so then the child must be able to use her hearing to monitor what is the child is saying, and with the correct volume articulation. Okay, so the language is divided into two things: receptive language, which is the child understanding of what is said to her, and the expressive language, how she communicates and what she means to understand. Basically, expression is how she is communicating, that her language get understood by the others. So in this, we see if the two issues are there, like ocular motor issues, which we talked earlier, then they have trouble making and sustaining eye contact because they don't have, the muscle does not have control over the eyes. So typically by 3 months, the major language milestone comes, in which the child look into the eyes and look at the lip movement. So maybe at that age, when the child is growing till one, they don't develop the language and speech, but still they are absorbing speech. They try to connect the sounds and the words. But if because of the ocular motor issue, the child will not be able to watch your eyes and mouth when you speak. So we do see a delay in language delay because of the oculomotor issues as well. Or if a child is having a oral motor planning issues, the child will not, the child will not be able to process out the sound properly. Like we talked, I already said, the speech is a complex in which the child should know how to use their tongue, lips, and jaw to produce the sound accurately. But if they have a oral motor planning issue, they'll not be able to produce sounds. If a child is having auditory processing issue, uh, then if a child is having hypersensitivity to speech frequency, it interfere with listening and combining the sounds of speech. Okay, if a child nervous system is over aroused or under aroused, he gets a very hard time to pay attention to words and understand their meaning. Sometimes child get distracted by conflicting sensory input, and we do see a child with poor if a child is having speech and language delay, they have a poor functioning of vestibular sense. Okay, see, we are not an expert on this thing, but the only point we have made, we talked about speech and language auditory processing is to just to touch the part that sensory system do play role uh, in a communication and language delay, in a speech and language delay. But if you guys have any doubt, or do you feel like your child is having any concerns in it, uh, please do get a proper assessment from a speech language pathologist and audiologist, because we just wanted you to have a sense to know how things are connected, but we are not an expert to talk on this topic. And I really want to tell you one more thing which I missed out on oculomotor control is, uh, we do see a child, if you know, there is one research happened in US in which they said like 70% of the underachiever in the school, they have sensory processing issues. 70% have, even they have, you know, good eyesight, they have good eyesight, but because of their poor uh, processing issues, they do face, they are coming under underachievers. uh, when you but I really recommend you, if you feel that your child is having any issues with visual perception and oculomotor, there is one behavioral optometrist, or they also called as developmental optometrist. They check the eyesight, but they do check the how the child is processing visual information, and it is available in LV Prasad, Hyderabad. So if you feel that your child, so we will highly recommend you to please go and have your child assessed on it. Okay. Now I will hand over it to Ridhima to continue it further.
So the next is the topic under the sensory perceptual skill is cognitive skills. This is a very frequent term which is being used by all the rehabilitation workers, if you have noticed. So first, I would like you to understand what does this word mean. So literal meaning of cognition is the mental action or process of acquiring knowledge and understanding through senses, experiences, and the thoughts. So it's an ongoing process. Since the birth up till our the adulthood, we are still continuing and building up our understanding, and our experiences and our refinement in senses are building up. Because of that, we are increasing our cognitive levels. So in children, it refers to how they think, they explore and figure things out, which help them in interacting with the world efficiently. It involves the progressive building of learning skills. Like as I said, it is not a stage, it is a continuous process. And the skills which are very, very important to develop this cognition are attention, memory, and thinking. So these crucial skills enable children to process sensory information and eventually learn to evaluate, analyze, remember, make comparisons, and understand cause and effect relationship. Like for example, if at birth the child has an understanding of that this is a spoon, that this is a toy, and my mother is shaking the toy, okay, the rattle. So and the sound is coming, and visually he's able to track. Okay, so we'll say that at that particular age, the cognitive skill of child is appropriate. But at a certain stage, again, this has to progress. The the progression will be that when he was able to pay attention to what was shown to the baby, and he was able to focus. Okay, so that attention has progressed to creating a memory. Okay, so when the baby develops, so he will remember that this was a toy which my mother used to shake. Now I can too shake it. Okay, so this is a progression. So cognitive skills have to progress. Then later on, how thinking. So when he will grow a little more older, so he can use that rattle for pretend play. Okay, so this is a simple example to make you understand that attention, memory, and thinking, and there are other skills also in attention, memory, thinking. So there are different levels. Okay, so we cannot go right now into this. So just understand that cognition has to progress in each and every stages and ages. So child will be unable to pay attention due to overreactive or underreactive nervous system if he is not paying enough attention to a object. If sensations such as movement or touch are frightening, overstimulating, or not even noticed, these problems can contribute to cognitive delay. Most children with sensory processing problems, except low functioning autism or MR, they are having average or even above average intelligence. Most cognitive tasks rely on good integration of sensory input and age level mastery skills in area. Like, for example, I told you, so if a child is able to process all the sensory information, and plus, according to the age, the child is able to motor plan his movement. So his cognition level are going to increase. So some cognitive benchmark are, I request you to parents to actually understand that if a child is not doing these activities, then you really have to intervene into this milestone. So by 6 months, they should be able to use hands and mouth to explore objects. They should be able to find the partially hidden objects. By 9 months, they should play 2 to 3 minutes with one toy, like rotating and touching and poking. Then imitates of familiar gestures, should be able to completely find the hidden objects, deliberately touches an adult's hand or toy to start an activity. So you see, by 6 months, his cognition level was like just to partially find the hidden objects. But by 9 months, he should be able to find the completely hidden objects. By 12 months, he should be able to retrieve an object to resume play. He should be able to guide a toy with hand, throws objects to see what happens. So this is or exploring. So by 2 years, rotates and upside down pictures. He should be able to use tools to solve problems such as climbing on a chair to get a toy, matches sound to appropriate animal pictures, engages in a symbolic play. By 3 years, talks to himself to expand on play theme or to an imaginary friend, understand the concept of two, and discriminates between the sizes. So these are the basic cognitive understanding where you can actually assess your child that if the child is lacking in these milestones, then the child need an intervention. Signs of cognitive difficulties are difficulty paying attention even for short periods, inability to sit still for any length of time, taking an extraordinarily long time to complete tasks such as homework or write a written test, poor memory when recalling learned facts or multi-step written instructions, weak listening skills and difficulty in remembering oral instructions, difficulty with reading, spelling, vocabulary, and comprehension, problems with abstract concepts in maths, struggling to plan and prioritize. So how we can facilitate cognitive development right from the when the baby starts interacting with the environment. So to promote your child's cognitive development, it is important that you actively engage in quality interactions on a daily basis. So like talking with your baby or a toddler and naming commonly used objects. So even if you're just feeding a baby, so you can simply say that you are eating with a spoon, this is milk, drinking with bottle. So start talking rather than just passively feeding the baby. Start talking to the baby. Letting your kid explore toys and move about. Okay, singing and reading to your baby, exposing your toddler to books and puzzles, expanding on your child's interest in specific learning activities. Now, if you get to know that your child is showing interest in certain set of animals or birds or toys, just start expanding his imagination. Like for example, if a child likes a dinosaur, okay, so you can show a toy of dinosaur, and you can actually point out how many legs, eyes are there, how even you can, from your mouth, you can mimic how the dinosaur looks like, if it is dangerous. So just expand the child's interest by giving him a lot of other information. Answering your child's why questions. Don't ignore this, because it's a very important aspect of developing cognition. Okay, so if a child is not satisfied what he's been looking for, so his interest will lose, and he will try to find it in other ways also. So always show interest in answering their questions. Provide him with choices and prompt them to make thoughtful decisions. Okay, so if a child wants to play, if a child is confused with a lot of toys around, and you can help them out. So if there is a car or a truck, and child is confused and simply just playing car and truck, he's just simply moving. So what you can do, you can start just doing a pretend play. So let mama take a truck, and you are driving a car. So you just create a scenario and you try to expand his thinking levels. You should also allow your child to explore different ways of solving problems. While you may not want to provide you may want to provide some gentle guidance and encouragement, but allow your child some time to figure out things. So you have to be patient. Okay, don't just jump into solutions. So if any hurdle, if you're playing this truck or car game, and if you place some hurdles in between, and that hurdle comes in between your child's car, so just don't tell, okay, you can go over the jump, or you can go from side. Okay, just give a hint or clue, so that he's forced to think that what other ways he can mark his way. So this may require some patience on your part, but it will ultimately help him to learn instead of providing all the solutions. Okay, so until this, the first 2 sessions and this the half-hour session, we have covered the sensory system and the processing, and how this sensory system is important for developing the sensory-based motor skills that we covered in the last webinar. Okay, so today's session we have covered the sensory perceptual skills and the cognitive skills. These are the building blocks. Okay, so these are the building blocks which is required for a child to function efficiently in whatever environment he is in. Okay, and to be independent in all these skills, like in self-regulation. So these are the end products of sensory processing. So finally, when we look at our, at our kid, okay, he being independent in all these 4 areas. These are the basic 4 areas. A child should be finally independent with a minimal, effort. So these are self-regulation, regulation of attention, academic readiness, and activities of daily living. So most of the parents, when they come to us, so they actually come with issues in these areas only. Self-regulation means a child will be having a behavior issues. Attention, lack of attention is the most common challenges the parents face. Academic readiness, whether my child is ready to go to school. So, and the activities of daily living, like he should be independent doing age appropriate skill, like for toileting. He should be indicating for toileting, doing brushing, bathing according to age, right? So all these activities actually require all the previous building blocks which we have covered. So if a child is not independent or is not showing age appropriate readiness to all these 4 areas, we have to really intervene and look which part of the sensory system is affected, which part of the sensory motor is affected, and which part of sensory perceptual is affected, so that we can intervene in a better way. So trust me, there is no shortcut. There is no shortcut for a child to learn attention. Okay, it is a process. Again, I told you that cognition is a process. So if you ask any like therapist, like randomly, just tell me the tips to improve my child's attention. Okay, it will be very difficult for a therapist to tell you at that moment, just by seeing an hour. You do this, you do this. Okay, so by now there are 3 systems we should know about the child before telling you, okay, these are the strategies you do for improving the attention. But the activities which we are telling right now, it should guide you. Okay, it should guide you what all the other ways which you can improve the child's attention or self-regulation. Okay, so we'll see one by one in brief uh, how these self-regulation and attention are very important skill to attain the academic readiness and activities of daily living. So self-regulation it refers to the ability to master one's mood, self-soothe, delay gratification, and tolerate transitions. So if in a certain environment, okay, with so many stimulation around, and the child is able to self-regulate himself, like for example, if there is a party going on and there is so much of sound, and if the child is able to calm himself and he is able to enjoy the party, then you will say, okay, my child is having a self-regulated nervous system. Okay, but in other sense, if the child is not at all comfortable, so you will get an idea, okay, his senses are overloaded, so you need to pay attention to it. Okay, so to self-regulate, a child needs to be neurologically organized, that is able to moderate internal highs and lows without throwing tantrums, without showing any negative response. If a child is able to maintain his calm in any kind of environment, then you should be assured that he is self-regulated. It might be that you should also take care that if his behavior is bothering others, okay, then you should be bothered actually. But if to self-regulate himself in certain kind of environment, if he's doing jumping, and if he's doing like this, or if he's closing, so believe me, this is not a behavior. It is just that he is trying to calm himself and soothe himself. Unless and until he's showing any negative behavior or he's showing any negative behavior to others, okay, so let him just do, because he's self-soothing himself. And that's a very good strategy if a child has learned himself to calm, how to calm themselves. So signs of poor self-regulation: have trouble falling asleep and staying asleep, being woken is difficult for them, or sleeping at inappropriate times. They may become hungry at irregular intervals or at unexpected hours in the middle of the night, unable to focus when they are required to, especially during sit-down activities, unable to draw herself or himself away from a task they are focused on, and it's time to move on. The smallest shift in routine, an unexpected stressor, or just a bad day overall can result in an extreme overreaction. So these are the signs and symptoms of self-dysregulation. A child's ability to self-regulate forms the foundation for developing organized levels of arousal level, behavioral responses, and ability to sustain attention for longer periods of time. So it's very important to distinguish between self-regulatory behavior and a normal tantrums. Okay, this is again a very deep topic, so we can maybe discuss some other time about this. Strategies to cope with self-regulation issues. So you have to pay attention to your child. Okay, so it means that if you have to identify your child's temperament, okay, his activity level, his sensory threshold. Okay, you know that this might create a problem wherever you go, in a shopping mall or birth parties or weddings. You know that this will create a problem for him. So you would plan with the strategies. Okay, so just pay attention to it. What is creating such a negative responses in your kid? Tune into the kinds of sensory stimulation that the child avoids or craves. Okay. The second is anticipate responses, especially emotional crisis. So usually this happens when there are a lot of gatherings. When you take your child to a lot of gatherings, and this is the major concern of parents also, they stop going to gatherings also. So to avoid all these, negative responses, you can talk to your therapist. Okay, according to the need of a sensory, this need of the sensory system, your therapist can provide how to deviate these negative responses when you're going for gatherings. Empathize. Identify and empathize with the child's point of view, motives, and goals to help you understand his behavior. This is very important. Just to do you know that your child is having an issue? Okay, but you have to show it to your kid that by asking him. Okay, by asking him, what do you feel right now? Okay, you should know that what is his goal. what is his motive, why he's doing like that. Okay, according to age, you can intervene actually, by making up stories, or by, if the child is older, you can actually directly talk to him, that we are with you. Okay, so what makes you calmer, let us know. Okay, instead of just passively giving the solutions and do this. Okay, you can actually provoke the child to think what makes him calm. So his views also should be taken care of. Provide structure, this is very, very important. Establish consistent routine and schedules. Limit transition as much as possible. Expect the child to take longer than others to adapt to routines. This is very important. Okay, when you have especially 2 or 3 kids at home and you start comparing that he is doing, you are taking so much of time, don't do this. Never with these kids. Okay, just expect that because his sensory system is taking longer time to process, eventually the output will be also late only. So just patiently and just pushing and with positive words, just expect the child, to finish the task. Okay, and with a positive mindset. Have realistic expectations. Expect inconsistency. Okay, one day she might not want to go to school, she might not want to do this activity, so don't get bothered. Okay, yesterday she went, not today she is not going, so that's okay, that's completely fine. Even we do it like that. One day we want to do this and another day we don't want. With these kids it will be more frequent. Okay, so just be patient, and how to decrease this inconsistency is like, just break challenges into small pieces. Okay, so if you have given a task and her sudden reaction was that, I don't want to do this, so there is a reason why the child is telling, no, I don't want to do. So you should be smart enough to figure it out. Okay, maybe he's finding it too challenging, to decrease the task into small pieces. Okay, and encourage him to achieve one goal at a time. Some kids are there, they just want to finish it every at one go, and to just take the a sense of achievement. Okay, but at the end that is not important. The important was the process. Okay, how they have achieved was more important. So break challenges into small pieces. Discipline, when the child loses control, avoid punishments. This is very, very important. Okay, no, nothing negative actually works with kid. It might be a temporary solution if you punish, and at that moment the child will stop. But actually what happens, it's a negative impact is happening. And if you allow the child, to help the child find some quiet time away from whatever the sensory overload, or or to, if a child wants to gain self control, give that time and that space. Okay, believe me, it works. It really works, rather than punishment. Punishment is just a temporary solution, it's not a permanent solution. Problem solving, so with bigger kids you can do this. Set up a problem solving time to discuss problems. Okay, so you can sit with them, okay, with a very friendly way, and what are the things which is bothering him in school or with friends. It's very important to talk to them and have a that time dedicated to them for problem solving. A child should know that today is Monday, and at 6 o'clock my problem should be discussed. So make it a very, very clear this thing, clear cut guideline. So today is the day where I can discuss my problems. Become your child's advocate, especially in your friend circle, in your relatives. Don't leave a child like that. Okay, my child is like that, please understand. No, no, not at all. This is not going to help in any way. You yourself have to stand for your kid initially. Okay, so you have to make them understand. So he takes it information in a little different way. Okay, so it will be it will be sensitive of you to understand my kid. Okay, just advocate for your child in a positive way. Okay. The next very important skill is regulation of attention. So attention is the ability to obtain and sustain appropriate attention to task. This can be influenced by motivation, self-esteem, sensory integration, practice, language difficulties, and any existing diagnosis. So as you can see, there are 5 areas of attention. That is, first is focused attention. The name itself tells. So shifting attention, sustained attention, selective attention, and the divided attention. So the effective attention is what allows us to screen out irrelevant stimulation in order to focus on the information that is important in the moment. So which is required, very much required in the academics, in the classrooms, and doing the activities of daily living. This also means that we are able to sustain attention, which then allows us to engage in a task for long enough to repeatedly practice it. See, without practicing, a child cannot master any skill. And the child will not be able to practice unless he is able to pay attention to it. Okay, so repeated practice is crucial for skill development. Attention also allows us to pay attention to the important details, like do this, then that, before you are brushing teeth. Okay, so and this is also very important for parents to understand. The parents have a lot of expectations that my child should is not sitting for 15-20 minutes or 30 minutes, but actually a lot of research has been done. Okay, and the average consultation span for children by age, so by age 1 year, their focus time is 3 to 5 minutes. Even you will find, so focus time is not just looking at constantly at that object, it's like engagement time also. So if a 1 year old kid is playing with one doll for 3 to 5 minutes, it's good enough. Okay, so with every your child should be able to focus on a task for approximately 2 to 5 minutes per year of age. So as you can see, by 2 years it should be 4 to 10 minutes. If it is more, well and good. If it is less, okay, don't just push them, do this, no, we have to do this because therapist told we have to do it over 30 minutes. No, his nervous system is only prepared for taking information only for 4 to 10 minutes at 2 years of age. So likewise, till 10 years of age, it is 20 to 50 minutes, like approximately 1 hour. They can sit half an hour to 1 hour. The signs of difficulties in attention: not attend to a task when required or requested to do so, miss details in instructions, repeatedly makes the same mistakes due to not learning from past attention, be unable to listen to all of the information presented. They find it physically difficult to either calm down or to wake up as they appear sleepy and lethargic, begins a task but then gets distracted by something else and then forgets to complete what was asked to them. So if these symptoms are there, then definitely the child is struggling in paying attention, and you can talk to your therapist, and then accordingly intervention can be planned. So there are a few strategies to improve attention span. Repeat instructions. So see, these are the strategies which will work for some kid, which will work for some kid. So this is to give you a generalized idea. So you will have, okay, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. Try it out. What is best working for your kid? So first is repeat instructions. When you have given an instruction to a child, encourage them to repeat it back to you to ensure that the child has grasped, understood what is expected. Generally, what happens when we tell, do this, I'm coming. Okay, just do this. And you start expecting the child to do this. Okay, without even recognizing or without even appreciating the child has processed that information or not. So finally, the parents say that he does not follow instructions. We never care to understand that whether he is able to process the instruction when we were telling that. So at that moment only, if you would have done 2 or 3 times, okay, can we put this block here? Okay, Rahul, can we do this? So you have to look into eyes and ask him to repeat. Put this. Okay, so here the key is patience and repetitions. Okay, so it might would have been very easy for you, just to give 2-3 attention, 2-3 instructions and giving eye contact. A child might have responded to you. Okay, rather than do this. Okay, do this. Okay, so no, it doesn't work like that with these kids, because now you know that sensory processing plays a major role in letting the information in. Eye contact. Get close to the child to ensure they are able to hear you and see your face. Get down to their level. It's very, very important. See, what all these strategies actually focuses on, it's not the end product, it's the process. Okay, if even in one that for 5-10 minute activity, if a child is started looking at you for a few seconds, take it as a major milestone. Okay, so from there you can build up. Simple language. Use clear, specific language when making requests, and if necessary, show them what you want them to do, like imitation. Reduce background noise and distraction to help a child maintain attention long enough to grasp the information required to complete the task. Implement self-regulation strategies. So earlier, which we have talked, you can identify best what is working for your kid, and then you can implement before giving him the attention task. Discrete skills, like activities that have a defined start and end point, such as puzzles. Okay, so make sure the child understands that this is a starting point and this is a finishing point. Okay, so maybe you can, what Rafia told, you can have a visual aid to tell the starting and the finishing point. Visual schedule, it is very, very helpful. It enables a child to see and understand what is going to happen next. Schedules also help people to organize themselves, to plan ahead, and thus to attention more effectively as they know the end is coming. So it can be in a visual picture. Okay, you can make a picture of if the child is, the bathing time is over, then the breakfast time, and then the studying time. So you can make a picture, or if a child can read, you can make reading also, or you can take out a printout, cutouts, and you can make it a schedule, put it in the wall, and then a child can see, okay, after this I have to do this, and like this way the child will be self-regulated also, and they would know that after this has to come, and they will be better planned. Timers help with transition, as they tell the child for how long and when they are going to have to do an activity. Timers also allows us to pre-warn the child that a task for demand is coming. So timers, don't use in your mobile timers or something. Okay, be a little creative with that. Okay, maybe you can use a small bell. Okay, and then maybe you can have a visual timers. So you can use the bindis. Okay, so if one task the child has finished, so she can pick up the bindi and she can put it on the box. So maybe you can have boxes for timers. So if one task she has finished, she herself will put bindi on the box. Okay, so one task completed, one bindi will go, or a coin, or whatever you have, or a bead also you can take. So maybe in the box she can put one bead or one sticker. So be creative with the timers, and that will motivate the child to finish the task. Okay. So now in academic readiness, so we know when our child is ready to go to school. Usually the conception is that my child is not talking, let's put them in school. It's very, very common. But before that, there are some 5 or 6 basic guidelines a child should be having before going to school or preschool also. Otherwise, a child will have issues, and eventually they will turn up into behavioral challenges. Okay, so by the time a child is ready for preschool, there are the building blocks, okay, which you should be aware of it. The first is ability to modulate touch sensation. That is, child should have a tactile discrimination abilities, which is required for sitting in the class. So there are many kids, so they will come and touch. If a child has a tactile issue, so you can imagine how badly or how negatively it is going to affect. Okay, and then the child won't sit in the class. Ability to adjust one's body to changes in gravity and to feel comfortable moving through space. Vestibular sense, again, the sensory system is playing. So if a child is expected to move in the swing or a slide, okay, or going from one classroom to another classroom, okay, and even there are sports periods also. If a child is struggling with vestibular sense, definitely a child will show a behavior, or they will avoid going to school. Ability to be aware of one's body parts. Okay, so if a teacher, in the rhymes it is there, touch your eyes, touch your nose, and if a child is not aware of that, so just imagine how the self-esteem will be affected. The self-confidence will be affected, because the child very well understands that I don't know this. Okay, trust me, they understand. They know what they can do and they know what they cannot do, and they even understand that adults in their environment, they are trusting us or not. So, and again, then emotional insecurity and everything will follow. Ability to use the two sides of the body in a cooperative manner, bilateral coordination. Again, the tool use, pencil, crayons will be affected, so the child will be having difficulty in doing these activities. Ability to interact successfully with the physical environment, like to plan, organize, carry out a sequence. So if a teacher asks a child to go and get your book, so you know how much movement planning is required in taking out the book. This is called praxis. So the next is his eyes and ears are prepared to take over as the primary teachers. So if you remember in first webinar, we talked about the far senses and the near senses. So the near senses were the vestibular and proprioceptive. So if a child sensory system, these two systems are not over aroused or under aroused. Okay. If it is over aroused, then you know his attention is going for a toss. If it is under aroused, again, attention will not be there. So if his attention is focused on himself, to calm himself or to soothe himself, then his eyes and ears will not become a primary teacher for learning in classroom, especially in classroom. Okay, if he's bothered by perceptive sense, tactile sense, and vestibular sense, his eyes and ears will not become a primary teacher. And this has to, as we have seen today in today's session, perceptual skills, the visual and the auditory skills, how it can relate to the reading and writing difficulties. So eyes and ears have to become a primary teachers before they enter the school. And how you will get to know that eyes and ears have started coordinating well, that we have told you previously. He can visualize, he should be able to visualize past and future situations, like that is important in pretend play. Okay, so if suddenly a teacher makes some, during the story time, the teacher makes some sound of lion roar karke, okay, and the same was done at home also, okay, by mom or dad. Okay, so he will visualize that, he will suddenly visualize the mom's reassuring face. It's okay if the lion sound is also there, so it's okay. So if the teacher is also doing the same thing, he will be able to visualize, okay, this is okay, nothing is going to happen to me. So visualization of past and future situations is also very important for the emotional security and for self-confidence. By kindergarten or first grade, the child's brain is mature enough to specialize. Now, specialization means that the child becomes more efficient and purposeful in his actions. Before kindergarten, you must have seen that randomly he's just putting his head down and legs up. Okay, any hand movement, any other direction it is going. But by kindergarten, if a child is given a pencil or a crayon, so they should know, okay, the crayon is folded like this and it is done like this. Okay, so kindergarten or first grade, this develops till first grade. Okay, so specialization will be there for any particular task. Like if a child is given a spoon, so he know that spoon goes where. So by kindergarten or first grade, he knows the spoon goes where. So this is the specialization of any toy, of any object or a task. So these are the key points. The child will continue to process sensation throughout his life. Okay, as he encounters different situations and new challenges, he learns to make adaptations in meaningful ways, feeling good about himself, and then he is ready for school. So make sure when you are preparing your child to send to school, at least his sensory systems are working in coordination. And if it is not, okay, then we therapists are there to guide you. Okay, do for each sense what can be done. Okay, so to minimize the effect of the under arousal or the over arousal. So if the child is already struggling with a sound and you want to work on his language, okay, usually the children who have over aroused auditory sound, they struggle in language also. And what you think is by sending to the school, the child will develop a language. So if if the language delay is due to just because of the environment, then it's fine. But if the child is having a sensory issues, it is going to create more problems, more challenges, even for you to handle the situation. The next very important is activities of daily living. So all the activities that we do to maintain our body, like for eating. So if a child is having a difficulty in eating, what can be affected at back? So that can be tactile sensitivity. So even the texture of the food will bother him if the child is tactile sensitive. The fine motor skills, using the spoon, using the glass, eye-hand coordination, if that is affected, again, eating will be eventually affected. Motor planning and sequencing. So eating is a sequential task. Okay, so mixing, breaking, putting in mouth, and then chewing, and then swallowing. It's a sequencing task. So if these are affected, the eating will be affected. So an occupational therapist can guide you. He can break the activities. The best way is to break the activities according to the child's level, and then we proceed further. So generalizing the thing is that if a child is having any issues in these 4 areas, tactile sensitivity or fine motor planning, and if a child is having an eating issue, okay, so we have to look into all these 4 areas. The same goes for dressing. If the child is tactile seeker or a defensive, he will avoid wearing something. Same, poor fine motor skills, poor visual perceptual skills. Okay, the child will not be able to choose properly if he has a visual perceptual difficulties. Okay, so many parents before dressing, it's actually the choosing part of a dress. Okay, so if the child is affected in these 4 areas, then we have to take it the same way. After the assessment, we get to know where the child is having a problem in dressing areas, and then we take it forward. Same is for grooming and bathing. If the child is tactile sensitive, obviously bathing will be difficult. No water touching, no soap touching. So then we have to find the accommodations and the strategies to deal with it. And this cannot be generalized because it is different for every kid. Okay. Toileting again requires tactile sensitivity, proprioceptive sensitivity, vestibular sensitivity, and auditory sensitivity. For toileting requires everything. Okay, so if a child is struggling in any of these areas, toileting will be affected. Okay, so this is the end part of it. So a flower does not think of competing with the flower next to it. It just blooms. So we adults have to help them to bloom independently without comparing with other kids.
The Fernandez Child Development Center is also offering online services. So we have behavior therapy, speech therapy, remedial therapy, physiotherapy, and occupational therapy. So if you need any assistance in any way, so you can contact us.
So babbling usually comes between 2.5 to 3 months. So ba 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 la la, they start doing it. Some sounds they start producing like that, and the proper babbling comes by 6 to 7 months.
The child repeats or asks in the language we ask him. How can we handle it?
No, it is not necessary that you should be taken to a specialist. You can wait. So what all the cognitive skills, if you remember, in cognitive skills, I told you how to start talking to your child, right? How to start reading and giving eye contact to your child. Okay, maybe we can share it once again. So this again comes in improving the cognition, the cognitive skills of a child. If a child is delay in babbling, so you can wait for 2 to 3 months again, okay, and try from your side, okay, if he is responding to your inputs. If it is not, then you can meet our speech therapist, speech and language therapist. Rafi, can you share that cognitive activity slide?
And Mr. Ravi, it would be better if you feel that if your child is in delay, please have a proper assessment with the speech language pathologist and neurologist. Ma'am, there are some questions in the chat box as well. Ma'am,
how to deal with verbal stereotype or vocal stimming? Tips for toothbrushing. Okay, so Surendranath, Mr. Surendranath. Okay, so if your child is tactile or orally sensitive, then we really have to look into the what all textures he is avoiding and what all textures he is liking. Okay, so for toothbrushing, first we can actually start with a finger brush. I would like to know the age of your kid. So we can start with a finger brush because they are soft, and you can put it in the warm water. It will become more softer. Okay, 2 months. So if he's having problem in brushing, or or you're talking about the hand movement, eye-hand coordination. So what part of toothbrushing is a problem? Is a sensory system or a sensory motor system? So that we have to look into it. Okay, if the tactile system is affected, then we will take the sensory channel. But if his eye-hand coordination is a difficulty, then we have, before putting him directly to brushing, we have to actually pantomime, or we have to imitate in some other situation that action of brushing. So he resists brushing. Okay, so we assume that he is tactile sensitive then. So it is just limited to brushing only, or the other part also, like food, some kind of food he avoids. So maybe you can mail it to us. If we have given we have given the ID. Okay, yeah. So I assume it's a tactile issue. Okay, so then he will need a oral motor stimulation program. So we can guide you better because we have to know the history now of your child. And you are writing about stimming, vocal stimming also. So definitely, if the tactile part of the oral area is affected, okay. So stimming means he might be seeking also. Okay, so there are two discriminative situations you are telling us. So definitely, your child needs an intervention, and he needs oromotor stimulation program. So do contact us regarding this. Is there any simple tool to assess the sensory perceptual skills? Oh yes, there are very, very simple tools to assess.
Salimunisa is asking that my son has issue with different textures and he simply wears ultra t-shirt, don't realize, or front to back. He also don't pick right slipper pair.
Son has issues with different textures and he simply wears ultra t-shirt, don't realize, or front. Okay, so he also doesn't pick. So here comes the picture of the bilateral coordination. If he's picking up the different textures, if he's fine with it, so let it be like that only right now. But definitely he needs a tactile stimulation program, okay, where we give different kind of textures to rub against the body to improve his sensitivity. Okay, so it is just with a t-shirt, or he wants to wear full pants or half pant. Can you tell me about that?
Salimunisa, it could be we have to look into things more because of poor body awareness. Also, these things happens. Like I told you, in a visual perception, that when sometimes when they don't know about side of the body, they don't know which
Right.
leg to put, what is right, what is left, and because of the poor body awareness, they don't even realize that they're wearing a wrong slipper.
Wrong. Right.
And the first part of your question about the different texture, it could be because of the tactile sensitivity or seeking. So we would like to know more about it. Raviji is only, he's saying the child is 21 months now. He's just making nana tata sounds. So I will really suggest you, Raviji, to please go for speech language pathologist assessment. They are the right person to guide you in this language. Because if they find anything, red flag in another area, they will definitely refer it to other departments as well. But you really, if you have language issues, please refer it to them. Okay, thank you so much, everybody, for coming here. This was the last session of our OT webinar series. Please do give us a feedback, fill out the feedback form so that we can.
Yeah, and also what all other things you would like to know from us. So mention that also you would like to know more on certain topics, so that we can think of the next time.
Thank you so much.